Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 116. So just giving an insight of what we got up ahead for next week and comparing our analysis from last week also. So we will start off with gold. So for last week we was pretty much looking at some sell-off opportunities. We're pretty much looking for price to head into 1860. So in theory what I'm trying to see right now is see if we can go just a little bit further. I think we've got pretty much like a fair place to go lower. We need to basically probably I'm thinking 1880 is probably an area where we could expect price to come into. So I'm still kind of selling or looking for some sell-offs here mainly, but that's not to say through the week we could get some rally to the upside. But pretty much ultimately I'd be looking for some sells. So whether in the short term we get some little push up and then the drop off, that's a possibility. I think that could probably make sense for that to happen, but ideally we're probably most likely going to see the bigger profits for this short-term period, I guess, or intermediate period to the downside. So that's what I'm keying myself up for gold. So yeah, pretty much that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye out for. So moving on to now EU. So with EU we're looking for a sell bias. So we had price basically rally to the upside, ultimately ended with the week pushing lower. I think we could have, we spoke about last two scenarios where price would push up or potentially push lower. I don't know if I did speak about price breaking 1.11, but what I was essentially looking for is for price to pull back. So where was it? 25th. So it was roughly around here. So maybe we would be expecting price to come up and then down, or have some sort of pullback for price to rally higher. So maybe this was the kind of play. But there's a second scenario that I wanted just to keep in mind and that is if we start to break a lot lower, we could end up taking into 1.07. So this is what I'm going to be looking into for next week, is seeing if we can look for a rally higher, or if we still continue to see those sells, we could end up seeing price touching into 1.07, maybe even lower. So I would probably start to look at some maybe some buys if it starts to, if it looks like there's some momentum there. But if price starts to sell off, I think we could probably just expect price to come into at least 1.07. So that's where I'm thinking for EU. So if we move on to NZDUSD, pretty much I have a similar bias from last week. I think pretty much we ended up looking at price reaching into 0.7 and then potentially selling off. So we can see that price has pretty much been doing that. So I was at 25th, so roughly here. So we ended up pushing low, then high, and then we're expecting this drop in price. So whether it's going to be incremental or aggressive, that's pretty much up to the market. But I guess we could expect as a second scenario, which is what I was thinking about this week, is that if price does really want to go higher, it could it could start to do this as well. So I think the critical area is roughly around the 0.69 area. If we start to see that bullish momentum, that could lead to possible buying momentum to the upside. So just keeping that in mind for next week. Taking a look at AU. So yeah, we was looking for some potential sell-offs. This week has just been pretty much choppy, nothing really in particular, which usually indicates that there's going to be a move coming soon. So we'll just have to stay patient with this pair for now. But what I'm seeing is price is stalling sideways between 0.745 and 0.755. So when we get a breakout, I think that'll be clear. We can probably expect price to probably commit to either a higher level or a lower level. But ultimately what I'm trying to look for is a sell-off. So we'll have to kind of see with that, because what could happen is price just doing something like this for a little short-term move, and then maybe the following week after the sell would come. So I'm just keeping in mind of how much price can really move within a week, as opposed to just just giving the general directional bias. But that's what I'm kind of looking at with AU. Looking in for USDJPY. So for this, we're probably looking at some sell-off opportunities. I think I was talking about this last week. So we saw a rise, but yeah, price rallied higher. We're pretty much waiting for a change in direction, because we've got a lot of moves to come lower. So I think maybe this could be the significant low. So what I'm possibly looking for is some sells. So we're gonna have to leave 125 and see if we can stay below this level, because if we can, we should be able to, and I'll probably just leave it in. So 125, so roughly there. I'm just, again, these are just generic zones, but I like to have like a buffer of like 20 odd pips to 25 pips low and high around the 125, just for reference anyway. But yeah, this is just drawn just to show you purpose wise of the zone. So again, if we stay low, then that zone, I think we could be looking at some sells long term. But if we do start to crawl higher, and it could creep in, and so that's why I'm just being aware of any buying opportunities, as momentum's just been hugely pushing up since early March. So just keeping an eye out for that. So that's pretty much my bias. I'm quite happy with the UJ from last week, and again, similar with CAD JPY, I'm looking for some sells. Just have to wait on this. There's no point waiting for price to continuously push higher. I don't think there's no point doing that. I think obviously price has just been rallying, so from a better way of getting involved with this is probably just to wait for some sales. So that's what I'll probably be looking out for. So I'm happy with CAD JPY. Moving on to EJ, so Euro Japanese Yen. So looking for again a turnover, but obviously price has just been rallying. So pretty much we just need to wait for a turnover at some point, and I think this is the waiting game that's gonna take out most people. Well, the difference between people who make money and who don't, because if you can't sit on your hands, you're pretty much going to be throwing money around, and it's not really good. So yeah, long term speaking, I think it's just best to wait for this to turn over to the downside. So whether this is the high 137, or if we start to break significantly lower, again, there's multiple scenarios that we can take apart from this. I wouldn't even be too worried about missing this entire move. It's definitely doable again at some point in the future. So if you did miss the move from the downside, or you did get something but you want to get in again, I think it's pretty much understanding where we are in the market, and yeah, pretty much just waiting for price to turn over. So yeah, so moving on to AUD JPY. So we can see some momentum kicking in, EMA switching over. I think we can probably expect some sort of minor pullback, but ultimately, we were looking for this sell-off. So early on in the week, we had a huge push higher, but we ended the week selling off. So again, if you had that sell-off bias from the upside at 94, I think you would have been able to get in, some good levels in that. But yeah, ideally, I'm looking for some sells. So we'll see how we respond around the 94 level. That's where I'll probably have my sell zone right there. So moving on to USDCHF. So for this, last week speaking, we were pretty much in a 50-50 scenario. So where were we? 25th. So we had the expectation that price could push up higher, or it could pretty much sell. So pretty much we captured both ways in a weird way. So we had the scenario where price pushed up and rallied up, and then there was the second scenario that we drew where price could sell off, and as you can see, obviously that's what we've been doing so far. So what I'm going to go on for this week now is I'm going to actually just monitor price action, but there is a possibility that price can break this high and go above 95, but I think how price has just been moving lower really rapidly, momentum wise, I think it's probably likely that we could expect some sells further into this. So we'll have to see what we can come from this. Maybe through the week we could get some buys, but I'm probably just gonna pick off some sales at this current time. Maybe through the week when prices, gives us some more clues, we could expect price to push higher. I'm not entirely sure, but it could look something like this. But I'm just going to leave it on there just for reference. But I think that if we are going to look for a buy, it will probably be around 91. So all the way down here. So we have a long way to go. So, but there may be some small moves within this. On the lower side, maybe at 92. Maybe if we get another rejection. But in theory, what I'm trying to do is seeing if price can push up higher, and if we can ultimately push lower. So it's pretty much 50-50 really. So yeah. And finally, looking at USDCAD. So we were looking out for some potential buying opportunities. We're just keeping an eye out for price to turn over. I think we just need to wait a little bit more patiently. So I think we spoke about price doing one or two things. So we'll either get a rejection straight away at 124 or 125, or we'll probably get price to dip into the low of 1245, and that's our second scenario here. So in theory, we could expect price to eventually make its way to the upside. I'm not really entirely too sure about what direction we're going to go or when we're going to go. We just have to pretty much stay patient. So what could actually happen is we could get sells to basically sell off to the downside, and then we can do something like that, okay, where we see a sell-off in price and effectively we see price move lower. So yeah, so that will be, I think that's what I'll cover USD CAD. Pretty much that's all for this week. Obviously NFP, so expecting a little bit of choppiness, price action. So yeah, so moving ahead for next week, I think there is some opportunities within the Japanese yen pairs. But yeah, we'll see what comes up for next week. So if you did get value from this video, feel free to drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed, and thank you very much for your listening and your time, and we'll see you all next week.